So today, our topic, I think, is very timely. We want to feature 3 different programs and 3 different ways of configuring our introductory course in international business. And next week, we'll continue this series and we'll feature 2 more examples for you. I think there's a lot we can learn from each other. Obviously, each of our schools is different with a different student profile, different economic, commercial environment in the immediate community, and different objectives and different ways we can cater to our curriculum needs as well. So today I'll talk about our recent experience in putting together a highly analytical and skills-based senior course, capstone course in international business that we'll start teaching from this year on. So this is a brand new effort, and I'll share the rationale for you and how we organized it, and we'll teach it. Then we have 2 outstanding examples because we have 2 outstanding educators with us, 2 seasoned international business educators. I'd like to say hello to Linda Gerber from University of Texas, Austin. Dr. Linda Gerber has been continuing her outstanding efforts at UT Austin and has been a great leader in curriculum, in program development there. And she is one of those passionate master teachers. In fact, when we gather in Atlanta every year for the traditional IB pedagogy workshop, she's one of the ones who are sought after. So Linda, thank you so much for being here with us. And of course, another seasoned international business educator, another leader in the IB community. We have Dr. Gary Knight with us. So he comes from the West Coast. So we are in Atlanta. Linda is in Texas. Gary is a chair professor at Willamette University, and he's also somebody who's very familiar name. You know his scholarship, especially on Born Global Studies, and also a programmatic leader. He's on the board of AIB this last couple of years and one of the vice presidents. And I think, Gary, you are chairing the AIB annual conference next year, which will take place in Miami. So welcome to you, Gary. So let me start out and tell you about our effort, most recent effort, and then I'll go to Linda, I believe, and then Gary will come next. So just a little bit of background. We know that there's a lot going on in the environment, and especially in the business community. We've been hearing about one of the major trends, the mega trends, has been the move towards evidence-based decision-making. So managers today, executives are asking for hard evidence, data, analytically supported before they can make major decisions. It's not just intuition anymore, but they're looking for evidence to back up, to justify their investments and capital allocations and other types of key decisions. But recently, there's a couple of other undercurrents. One is obviously the change in technologies, automation and artificial intelligence, which has really reconfigured the marketplace and the way companies do business today. The business models have changed, new business models have come up. So the technology has also kind of been a mega trend in the background that we need to be thinking about. The other, of course, undercurrent is the new economy that we find ourselves in right now. We can call it distance economy, where remote working is necessitated by the disruptions. Obviously, the global health disruption, the pandemic, and the remote working that is necessitated by that. Recently, just last week, there's a report. I'll just refer to one report by McKinsey on the needs of the business community and the new skills that are needed. They're actually calling for reskilling the workforce. We've always heard about the skills gap, right? Whenever you talk to business people, they tell you about the mismatch between what we produce in the business schools and what they like to see in their new hires. So that's always been there, but this is kind of shocking. In a recent survey, McKinsey finds that 87% of the executives still feel that the current workforce is inadequate. They don't have the skills that they're looking for. So what are these new skills? They're also talking about kind of interesting things. One interesting fact is that McKinsey, from their studies, they're estimating that some 14% of the workforce, global workforce, will need to switch occupations or acquire new skills over the next decade. So at least 15% or more will switch their occupations or will need to acquire new skills. So they're calling for these new skills. So what are these new skills? I'll just quickly highlight 4 that they have talked about, which we very much feel is what is needed, because Georgia State University, which I will talk about, is in the middle of a major urban community. We're surrounded by small and large companies, Fortune 100, Fortune 500, as well as many small firms that are the employers of our students. And we are a big business school, so we produce a lot of students. So there are 4 sets of skills that they're highlighting. One is in this new distance economy, fully digital environment, digital skills are critical. Technical awareness, skills needed to operate in a remote world, be productive within the company's ecosystem, whether they are clients, partners, suppliers, distributors, public authorities, government agencies, and so on. So a critical understanding of basic technology and data concepts, skills like data visualization, applied machine learning, advanced analytics are some of the skills that they are seeking right now. A second skill is higher cognitive skills, problem solving, project management, creativity, innovation that we hear about. The third type is social and emotional skills, advanced interpersonal skills to sustain these professional ties despite the distance. So working again in a remote world, working remotely, how do we connect with our subsidiaries or suppliers or partners in remote parts of the world? And the fourth type, final type, is adaptability and resilience that we actually talked about last week in our webinar. Self-awareness, self-confidence, self-reliance. So these are interpersonal toolkits to manage your time, mental wellness, to reinforce resilience, and ability to overcome adversity, whether it's personal, community-related, or company-related kinds of concepts. So let me come back to the new course that we have developed. I mentioned that it's a senior capstone course. It is required of all business students before they graduate with their BBA. So this course we designed, our colleagues did a lot of thinking, and we went to the business community, talked to a lot of executives, we did some benchmarking. It's entirely analytical and tools-based and skills-based. I'll give you some examples. So in these 2 pages, I highlight in 2 columns fundamental challenges facing the firm. So the focus is what are the key challenges of the firm. In the second part, fundamental challenges facing the worker, the employee, or the manager in the workforce. So for each challenge, we talk about the knowledge, skills, and tools necessary that they need to acquire before they graduate. So that's good enough, Hannah. So thank you so much. So this will become available to you. And if you'd like to get a copy of the full syllabus, which is now going through various university level approvals, Professor Murat Dakli, who's leading this effort, will be happy to share it with you, a version of our syllabus. So let me just say a few words about what kind of challenges, what kind of issues that we bring out in this analytical skills-based course. One is the risk framework, risk mitigation. As you know, over the past, we've always talked about in teaching international business, we talked about the opportunities. In fact, we had a bias towards accentuating opportunity, measuring opportunity, quantifying opportunity, and we didn't really talk much about risks. Maybe a little bit about political risk, maybe a little bit about currency risk, cross-cultural risk, but not enough. So what we want to do in this new course, we want to highlight and give enough emphasis to the risk management, resilience, risk-resilient organizations, and various tools and processes necessary to build resilient organizations and talk enough about risk mitigation. So have a balance between addressing opportunity in the international environment and also addressing the challenges and risks so that we have a balanced view of the world. Another discussion, how do various globalization drivers compel firms to master internationalization on their way to internationalization? So we bring in another tool here, the customary integration responsiveness framework here, and talk about the impact of technological advances and how that integration responsiveness framework needs to be adapted. We talk about truly global companies and how do truly global companies gain and sustain competitiveness on a global scale. So we talk about flexibility, learning, strategy, organization, and processes, and run a couple of exercises. Coordination in the global enterprise, in the multinational enterprise, various tools, information technology platforms, best practices, global teams, global trends, global product launches, which are means and vehicles, tools to integrate the global enterprise. We talk about global market opportunity analysis as well. In our textbook, for example, we have a separate chapter on market opportunity analysis. So we talk about identifying country level market opportunity, industry level sales opportunity potential, and then company specific market opportunity or sales potential. Then we get into various trade-offs among international modes of entry, traditional topics, exporting, FDI, joint ventures, and so on. But here we talk about also the potential of mega cities, large urban areas as market destinations, target markets as well. So the analysis, as you know, recently has moved from the country level to more specifically regions, mega cities, even secondary and tertiary cities as well. So we talk about the way in which major urban communities like Atlanta are positioning themselves so that they can attract for more foreign direct investment. Here, I'd like you to take a look at Brookings Institute recent study. Over the last several years, they have had the Cities Project. Cities Project and is enabling about 10 major cities in the country, including Atlanta, as to how they can position and create a unique identity and appeal so that they can become greater recipients of foreign direct investment. So that's kind of interesting, how individual cities are lobbying, are positioning themselves in order to become major destinations for investment as well. We talk about, obviously, country market plans as well, but there we talk about new enterprises like digital enterprises, not just traditional firms, but the new age firms, and how we go about partnering and competing with family conglomerates in emerging markets, for example. So we talk about the impact of the trading blocks and regional trade developments and the impact of those on location, sourcing decisions, and so on. Strategic responses to host country intervention. So we talk about the cost, and we introduce frameworks by which we can estimate the cost of tariffs and non-tariff trade barriers to companies. We talk about the choice between legal, formal versus informal trust-based relationships and the impact of that on how we write our agreements, sales agreements, distributor agreements, licensing agreements, and so on. We talk about global social environment, and we bring the EPRG framework and talk about global citizenship activities of the firms, especially large multinational firms. And here we introduce another tool, another framework that we call local footprint analysis, where the company, such as, let's say, Coca-Cola, tries to demonstrate quantifiably their local impact, their value added in the local community in terms of jobs and tax revenues and other kinds of benefits that they bring to that locality. So these are all firm-related challenges. Then we turn to individual worker, individual executive in the organization, internationalizing company. We talk about cross-cultural proficiency. So we introduce our concept of global competency framework. We talk about intercultural competence assessment. That's another tool. We introduce another exercise, critical incident analysis. We talk about global mindset and exercises to help the students to build global mindset and a geocentric value system. We talk about tools, and we go through exercises to build up uncertainty and risk environment, resilience towards risks and uncertainty in the environment. And we talk about ethical dilemmas and introduce our ethical responsiveness framework. So bottom line, for every concept, every key concept critical to the firm or critical to the individual worker, the student at this point on their way after the program, we introduce the essential concepts, the knowledge base. We introduce several tools. We use several analytical frameworks so that they will gain some tangible skills that they feel very comfortable going into the work environment. So this is kind of I think a timely innovation in our curriculum. It's not your typical, survey course in international business. It's not your typical international business operations strategy management course, but it's analytical, highly focused, highly skills focused course. So we feel very good about this, and we're in the process of finalizing this course, which we will teach both online and in person as well. So that's probably more than my time. So I'd like to turn to my good colleague, good friend, Linda, and have her introduce us what the course she has chosen in their curriculum to share with you. So thank you, Linda.
Well, Tamer, I'll just say, I think we've already got our time's worth. That's really exciting what you all are doing there. And I love the fact that it's so focused on specific skills. And I'm looking forward to looking through that handout and seeing how we might incorporate some additional things as well. So let me just say hello to everyone. I know we have a very multicultural group out there. It's exciting to, I wish I could see you, but it's exciting to be here with you. And I hope I'll be able to see you in person at the pedagogy workshop next year in Atlanta, and we can check out that mega city as well. So I'm going to go to a set of PowerPoints. I can't talk as off the cuff as Tamara can, but I try to get all my points there so I can focus on them. So let me just jump right in here. So what I'm going to cover in my time allotment is first give you a little context. We are going to talk about the Introductory International Business course that I teach here at UT, but there's a lot of changes afoot, as Tamara mentioned, but also understanding the context for our program, I think, is very useful. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about some changes that are going on in our program as well. We have 2 different international business major tracks that we are now incorporating. And then I'll get into talk about the international business course, how it's constructed. And then if time permits, then maybe a little bit of my philosophy on what's important in teaching. So first, UT is a big school. We have 51,000 students total, 41,000 undergraduate students, and a whole lot of majors. So it's a big context. The business school is about 10% of the undergraduate population, a little bit more. And the business school has separate admission. So you have to be, in addition to being admitted to the university, the students have to be admitted to the business school, and it's pretty competitive. We don't have an extensive number of majors, but we're building a lot of new minors. We've got 2 more coming online in international starting this next year. And I will say we have really good students. It's such an pleasure to teach our students. I love them. They're very devoted, they're very bright, and they really like learning. And you can imagine how encouraging that is for an instructor. We have very significant international programs at UT, lots of National Resource Center, study abroad programs, a couple of Department of State flagship programs. So there's really wonderful international resources here. Our undergraduate student population, it's important that we have those because we are very limited in terms of our international students. The state legislature limits any undergraduate student from outside the state of Texas to 10%. So that means we only have about 3% international students, which, if our goal is to internationalize our education programs, means we need those international programs. Fortunately, we have a large Asian and Hispanic heritage population. In fact, that's over 50% of our undergraduate population. And so we can draw on that, particularly when we add our study abroad students to it. This is not a typical year, but in a typical year, we'd have over 4,000 of our students studying abroad, doing international programs, and approximately the same amount that are coming to UT. So that really helps us provide more of an international context there. As I mentioned, we're going through some changes. Previously, our international business program was very much geographic orientation. We wanted to develop geographic expertise, and this program was created back during the 1990s, and that's what we thought that employers were looking for, and they told us we were, but in recent years that has changed, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But as Tamara said, the skills focus is very important. So now we have 2 programs. The first one is sort of our heritage program, where there's an introductory IB course, generally at least 21 hours of language courses, area studies courses that integrate with the language, as well as a study abroad or international internship requirement. Again, that's part of creating that geographic focus. And then there's 2 IB electives and a capstone course. As you can see, it's much more focused on the geographic expertise. Now we have modified that, and we still have the same intro course. We are requiring 3 IB electives, and I'll just briefly show you the list of what those are. As you can see, there's political and regulatory environment, finance, transfer pricing, supply chain, value chains, management, entrepreneurship. So very much more of a skill set of options there. And then we still have the study abroad or internship, the capstone course, but we have added this 3 courses of free business electives. And we're doing that because what we want to do is build cross integration with other majors within the School of Business. And the students can choose either track they want. So we can still have, those who want to go after this geographic focus may do so. So what were the rationales for the changes? Well, quite honestly, we had declining enrollments, particularly since the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. Students have become much more job focused, as has their parents. And we needed to, as is going on in Georgia State, we needed to provide more tangible skills for them when they graduate to move into international positions, or even regular positions where they're going to have to operate in the global economy. We also, and this is where those extra 3 courses come in, we're trying to set up our program where it allows students to major in IB and minor in another business discipline, supply chain, marketing, finance, whatever, or vice versa. Our students that are majoring in other areas can then increase their international business understanding through a minor and have courses that dovetail with their major coursework. So that's our thinking there. And the Center for Global Business that I'm affiliated with at UT has a huge goal of global readiness for every student that graduates from the university. And we hope that this combination will allow more students to be able to do that. We also have had a change in our home department. We were previously affiliated with marketing. Now we're affiliated, or we will be starting in September, with the Department of Business, Government, and Society. And the thing that's exciting about that is they wanted the IB program, not that marketing didn't, but they really wanted to build on the international business competency and add all these new courses. And of course, that was very exciting for us. So we've got a big organizational change afoot. So let me jump in here and talk about the IB course. Just for context, it has always been a macro-focused course, sort of the global economy, trends, players, globalization. Gary is going to show you the topics he covers in his course, and I'll let him use his time for that. But it's basically, essentially, we're covering the same topics. I think we have a little bit more of a lecture format in our program, although there is a lot of interaction, and we do have some other experiential kinds of activities. And we have textbook and extensive readings. Typically, I'll provide a reading list for you on each topic, but typically we have between 3 and 6 readings on every topic, and that's mostly from The Economist, Wall Street Journal, those kinds of publications. We also have a semester-long country analysis I'll tell about in more depth. And the modifications that we're making for this coming year is more applications. We're eliminating 2 briefing papers we used to have in the course, but in case you all like to do briefing papers, I'm going to send Hannah the instructions and topic suggestions for briefing papers. The students got to select whatever topic they wanted to investigate, staggered throughout the semester. But I loved doing those, but it just wasn't possible with our application focus that we were going to have now. So we pumped up the country analysis and eliminated the briefing papers. And we have more discussions and polls particularly because now with Zoom, that allows us that capability. Okay, so we have 2 exams, 40% total. I also do extra credit. I'll just show you this very quickly. I have maps that students have to identify countries on. There's different continents for each exam. And I do that because, as we know, our Americans are not well known for being particularly literate when it comes to countries in the world. I said our students are good, but occasionally I get some surprises, like last semester when one student identified a country in Asia as being Argentina. So we still feel like I need that. We have a digital textbook with learning assignments that I love. It makes sure the students are prepared before we talk about the material in class. And so if your textbook has that, I highly recommend it. And then we have our country analysis project. Class participation, both group and individual discussions, is 15%. And I use this thing called a face card that I'll show you if we have time. I might just have to send you examples of that but I use that for class participation, keeping track of it, but also just to kind of get to know the students. So the country analysis assignment is individual work. Each student has to select a country and a company that will take them through the whole semester. There's 6 assignments in this overall series plus a final report, and the assignments progress along with the topics throughout the semester. Now I'm going to show you one example, very short example, but I will share the full instructions for the report that you'll have available to you. And of course, I'm always happy to answer questions about that. The emphasis is on interpretation of information, analysis of information, and applying it to the company of their choice. So these are, I'm just going to go through these. These are the 6 assignments, describing the country, background analysis on the environment of the country, balance payments, trade and FDI, economic relationships, and then monetary history. And then the final report is focused on making an entry decision. Is this a country that your company should operate in, and how should they set up their operational plan? So I will have information for you on that as well in the instructions that we have for the students. Here's a brief example of the kinds of questions that go into the assignment. So what are the most important demographic characteristics of your country? Why are these factors significant? And we give them resources like Global Edge and other locations they can go to find this information. And then there's other questions about political local. And then the application would, given what you've learned here, how does this impact the decision to enter this country or not enter the country? And then what kind of strategic or operational implications does it have for the country? I mentioned that I use face cards. These are just index cards where the students can show me a picture of themselves and something they love and tell us something about themselves. And I use those to keep track of attendance. Actually, in the future, I'm going to have to make that a virtual face card, and I haven't worked out the technology for that, but when I do, I'll certainly share that with Hannah as well. We're doing polling on current events. So which of the following countries has been the primary target of foreign direct investment? We'd ask a question like that at the beginning. Most people get it wrong and say China instead of the United States. And then also asking some questions about which world event do you think is most worrisome? And then that becomes a method to increase engagement, discussion, and also encourage them to keep up with current events. We have group discussions for each section topic. So I have an example here in the slides of one, but I will send you a list of the ones we use for all of our various topics in the class. The students go into groups or breakout rooms if we're on Zoom, and they discuss that, and then they post in the discussion board, and we also use that for debriefing in class. Very quickly, a few final notes. I think it's so important to establish these personal relationships, particularly now that we're on Zoom. And I happen to know that Professor Doria from Georgia State is in the audience, and I always want to give a shout out to him because he has inspired me so much to use some of his tools and to try to be creative on my own to engage students on a personal basis, let them know you. I also think I want to force students to make as many decisions as possible. So there's always this dilemma between giving them direction so they know what they should be doing, but forcing them to make a few of their own decisions, which creates some discomfort. I do like a little discomfort. I don't like stress. So that's a tough balance to hit. I do want them to make as many personal choices in what they're learning as possible. And I have included some material on teaching in the COVID and post-COVID world, that at least some exercises that go with the country analysis. Some of my students are just sick of hearing about COVID, but I think they have to see that as one of the risks. And I want to just encourage you to think about how our new technology is allowing us to do a lot of exciting things educationally that I don't know about you all, maybe you were, I wasn't before. I wasn't thinking about our opportunities there. So thank you. And I'm going to turn it over to Gary and let you all ask me any questions. And of course, you're welcome to contact me at through my email at UT. It's on our website, and we can talk about anything else here as well.
And thank you so much. Thank you so much, Linda. That was excellent. With that, we'll turn to Gary Knight, Professor Knight.
Thank you. And I just shared my screen, and I just want to thank you, Tamer and Hannah, and all the team at the Georgia State University Cyber for hosting this webinar. I just want to continue along the lines that Linda was doing, talking about the Introductory IB course. My name is Gary Knight, and I'm a professor, as Tamer mentioned, at Willamette University in Salem and Portland, Oregon. And we are a private liberal arts university, so quite different from the University of Texas, with two professional schools, and one of which is the school where I work, the Atkinson Graduate School of Management. We have MBA and undergraduate education, of course, and we have a strong emphasis on teaching quality. And part of the reason for that is that our students pay pretty high tuition. Many of our students are actually working full-time in major corporations like Nike and Intel, and so they are pretty demanding. My classes are always a little bit smaller, so that gives me greater flexibility to do more interaction and activities and so forth. I'll just quickly mention, we are living in the time now where typical college students today are what we call the Gen Z. And Gen Z, you know, previously it was the millennials, and I think there's still some millennials in MBA programs in graduate school, for example. But most learners today, 20-year-olds, for example, are the Gen Z. And we find, among other characteristics, that they have very dynamic attention spans, a tendency to multitask, using high-tech devices. They like to stay connected and so forth. I think we've probably all experienced this in our classrooms as we try to teach and try to maintain the attention of our students. And so over the course of time, I have shifted from more of a lecture style, traditional style, to a much more interactive approach to teaching. So my number one message today is to, as you teach in the classroom, keep it interactive. And I prefer about 1/3 lecture and about 2/3 interactive. And I realize this is not always possible in larger class sizes, but in any event, I think you'll get the point. I use lots of exercises, cases, and other pedagogical tools. I encourage questions, obviously, but oftentimes, as we know, students are not willing, or they do not pose questions. Sometimes they're shy, or whatever the case may be. And so I always come to class loaded with questions that I've created myself that I think students might ask. And then I will say, looking at a particular slide, for example, perhaps you would be interested in knowing about X, or perhaps you might ask the question, why X? And then I will proceed to answer that question. I typically try to start topics with icebreaker questions. And the main point is that it's interactive. I keep the energy level high, give lots of examples, and also some personal stories. Sometimes that's interesting to students. I used to be an export manager, for example, and students learn hearing about being managers in the real world. So my overall strategy is that I teach the basics of a topic via lecture. I try to keep that under 30 minutes, and then I reinforce that topic with a case or an exercise or another pedagogical tool, and then I repeat. So for example, I teach about FDI. I'll talk about the fundamentals of FDI, and then I'll move on quickly to a case or an exercise to reinforce FDI. I try to move quickly among lecturing, Q&A, and pedagogical tools. And Tamer has already talked about this today in respect to the McKinsey report, and the times are evolving fairly quickly, but I think it's generally true that employers are seeking these types of skills: written and oral communication, critical thinking, teamwork, and so forth. And I try to emphasize those in my exercises and other activities in the classroom as well. The topics covered, Linda mentioned this. These are typical topics that I cover: globalization, the political environment, economic development, and emerging markets is one of my favorite topics these days, culture, and so forth. Basically talking in the first third or the first half of the course about the environment of international business, and then moving on to more strategic how-to dimensions of actually doing international business. This is a schedule that's drawn directly from my syllabus. By the way, this presentation and my syllabus and other items that I'm talking about today will be available at the Georgia State website. So you'll be able to access them there. So that's kind of why I'm going through this fairly efficiently. But this is a schedule coming out of my syllabus, basically. And the one thing that I would point out here is that on the right-hand column, deliverables and activities, these are all graded things generally on the right-hand column. These are things that I will grade, and I always include the graded homework and activities in my syllabus, but I will be doing many additional exercises and cases and other activities in the classroom that are not necessarily graded, but which are intended to engender classroom discussion and interaction. So in total, I might have my students do about 4 homework exercises during the semester, which we then discuss in class. Each student is responsible for a big case, a Harvard-style case and presentation done as a group with 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 other students. And then I also do a take-home final exam in the last week or 2 of class. And I like this model because it helps, it's another way that students develop their written skills. And then I assign 10% to participation. So pedagogical tools, well, of course, I introduce material. Students are expected to read the chapter for that week. I lecture, in-class videos I use a lot, guest speakers. And then the last 5 items here are actual pedagogical tools, exercises, activities that I use, and I'll talk about those in more detail just now. These are just some examples. When I mention big case here, I'm talking about typically large cases, 10 to 15 pages in length, that you would get at a site like, for example, Harvard Business School Publishing, and I'll talk about an example of that. And then I also do a number of mini cases, both as graded exercises and as non-graded exercises. And of course, all of these give rise to a lot of discussion, interesting discussion in the classroom. I also do more traditional homework exercises. I'll give an example. And then more recently, I've started doing more topical exercises, which I'll give an example there as well. But here's an example of a big case that I really like that I've been doing for now a few years: CFW clinics in Kenya, to profit or not for profit. And it's really about a chain of, I actually do it in conjunction with my discussion on licensing and franchising, because it's actually a franchised chain of healthcare clinics started by a retired American executive in Kenya that provide basic health care to people around Kenya, and that he's intending to expand into other countries in Africa. And I find this case to be quite interesting and raise a lot of issues, including in the realm of social responsibility. Big cases that I like include these listed here. And again, you'll have access to this list, but Oli Rosella in Bangkok, for example, is about culture. Harley Davidson, internationalization in the Trump era, is about government intervention and company strategy. Amazon in China is quite interesting. Puma in India is quite interesting. Puma is a smaller company relative to Nike and Adidas, and how they have managed through marketing to be successful in India, and so forth. Occasionally, I will write a large case, and I've written many smaller cases myself that teach specific topics that I want to teach. And the rationale for this is that I can design the case myself to teach exactly the topics in exactly the way that I want to teach them. And I can also update my cases with the passage of time. So they're always, ones that I write myself are always well suited to what I'm teaching. I can update them with the passage of time. Here's a mini case. Actually, Tamer Cavaskill wrote this mini case some years ago, and I've updated it. I teach a number of mini cases. These are typically about 2 to 3 pages in length, single spaced, as you can see here. This one's called Barrett Farm Foods, and it's about an Australian company getting launched into international business. And then what I have done is I have modified this case. By the way, these are all many cases, and other exercises that I'm mentioning today are at the end of chapters in the textbook that I have with Tamer. And I have modified many of these many cases for my own use. I put case questions at the end of these short cases. And let me just elaborate on this a little bit. Question 2 that you see here asks, Philip Austin chose exporting as Barrett's entry strategy for Europe. And then it goes on to ask, is exporting the right strategy, or is FDI a better entry strategy? Is joint venture a better strategy, et cetera, in the context of the case? And I have structured this question so that when it comes to time to discuss the case in class, I will actually go around and right there on the spot poll students as to whether they answered A or B or C or D. And this gives me the opportunity then to go back to those students that answered A, for example, exporting. Why did you choose exporting? Please explain why you thought that exporting was the best entry strategy for Barrett in Europe. And this is, again, a great way, and I do the same thing for those who chose choice B, foreign direct investment. Why did you choose FDI? Please justify your answer. And again, this is a great way to engender discussion in the class and to get students to thinking and to learning from each other, frankly, in the classroom. As for homework exercises, we have created numerous homework exercises. Here's an example called Assessing Markets for Cancer Insurance. And this one is essentially about, it's homework wherein the students have to identify, based on research that they conduct on the internet, out of about 3 different countries, I think it's China, France, and Canada, the best market that a given company like AIG or Aflac should enter for selling, in this case, health insurance. Now, quickly, I'll talk about topical exercises. These are all posted, by the way. We've done now about 10 of these topical exercises that are posted at the Georgia State website, newsletter website already. This particular one is on sustainability and energy and global transition. And it talks about the fact that today, for the first time in history, less than 1 billion people worldwide lack access to electricity. So more than 6 billion people today have access to electricity. And then I have a couple of articles that I can assign I may assign them to do research on energy, the topic energy at global edge, and I will almost certainly show a video in class, Outlook for Energy. And these are resources that are available, or recent articles from the internet. For example, the Forbes article there is from 2019. And then when we actually discuss this topic in class, I have a slideshow here that explains background on the global energy situation and access to electricity around the world and dilemmas related to electricity. Electricity, of course, is very important. It raises people's living standards. It reduces their tendency to cook using wood and other organics that create air pollution. But by the same token, electricity and electricity production produces different challenges on its own. And then I will distribute in class a short exercise like this one. And a typical question, for example, is, what are the implications of access to electricity as an opportunity for multinational corporations? And what strategies would companies use to market, their products to countries that are people that are newly gaining access to electricity? So anyway, that's basically my presentation. There are more pedagogical tools available, of course, and I took, as I mentioned, these many cases and exercises from our book, International Business 5th edition. The topical exercises are available at the Robinson, Georgia State website, which you see there, and you'll have access to that website. But you can also simply Google Pedagogy Newsletter GSU-CIBER. And I just want to say, I think the main takeaway for me for today, my talk today, is that today it's best to design the introductory IB course to make it more interactive and reinforce lecture topics with cases, exercises, and other pedagogical tools. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Gary. That is a lot, and I really appreciate you sharing a lot of resources that people can, our colleagues can go and use. It's a great takeaway, including the IB Concepts newsletter, monthly newsletter that we publish, available at Georgia State Cyber website. Lots of good food for thought there, lots of best practice. And the last point about interactivity, achieving interactivity obviously is going to be more difficult now that we're going to be, many of us, teaching online this fall and likely in the spring as well. This is one reason why I'm asking our colleagues to, in addition to developing their college, their course sites, Blackboard or iCollege, other types of course sites, as well as they can, but also add some synchronized live sessions with their students on a regular basis, perhaps once or twice a week. I think this will be appreciated, and for assessment purposes, it's the ideal, right? If you can see your students have an interaction over a case study or problem solving or a project, then you'll get to know your students a little bit better and hopefully do the assessment a little bit more fairly. There are some questions on this. Actually, Sarah and others are talking about how do we achieve interactivity when we teach online. We've covered some of these issues in past webinars, and we'll do more of these. But certainly this is one of our challenges. Several other good comments here. Arif from London, he talks about the importance of reputation risk as well, something that we also have thought about and will incorporate in our teaching. Companies are actually a lot more vulnerable these days to reputation risks. And he also talks about the focus on mega cities. I think I'm glad to see that. And also risk management in general. And in the future, I think we may have a webinar just on risk mitigation for the international company, small or large, just by that. So we'll look forward to that. Lots of other good comments and questions. The average number of students in the classroom, obviously that's something that is often imposed on us. We don't have a choice. At Georgia State, we minimized the numbers to 45 students in a traditional classroom. But now we're teaching online, so we typically cap the number of students to 60. And we also have the use of a graduate student assistant helping each instructor with various student-related projects as well. So there may be other questions we can respond to quickly here. Obviously, some of them Hannah responded because these resources will be available to you. Certainly those who have joined us today, they'll be receiving all of Gary's and Linda's and my resources as well. Just closing thoughts, Linda and Gary, if you'd like to share a word or two.
Well, thank you very much. Sarah has asked a question, how do it is an interactive classroom get transferred to the online environment, as many of us will be teaching online classes this fall and beyond. And it's really the same strategy as when you're live. You can do pretty much everything with Zoom that you can do in a live classroom. And as you probably know, there are breakout rooms in Zoom that even allow students to go out and have discussions on the side and then come back to discuss issues. Some professors like the Zoom platform because you can clearly see all of the students, not only their faces, but their names, and that facilitates teaching.
Yes, so thank you so much to Linda and Gary for sharing this great information with us today. And thank you to everyone for joining us and sharing your fantastic questions.